back to the Deeper Dive podcast, produced locally in the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Washington, D.C., here at Sacred Heart Roman Catholic Church in La Plata, Maryland. My name is Bill Winnell, joined this afternoon by Father Larry Swink. Good afternoon, Father.
Hey, afternoon.
And Monsignor Charles Pope. How are you, Monsignor?
I'm in good shape for the shape I'm in.
Good to hear. Today we're going to finish our series up on the Ten Commandments with the last two, Numbers 9 and 10. Father Larry.
Okay, so we're coming up to the final two, and the final two commandments are, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, and thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's goods. They're actually, these commandments actually command more than just, literally coveting a neighbor's wife and goods, but we'll talk a little bit about what the danger of being covetousness, of coveting things, and, not being satisfied with what we have and how it can lead to a lot of problems. So, Monsignor, let's start off with number 9. And I know we covered some of this in Commandment 6, but what is the distinction between Commandment 6 and 9? And why would they be separated?
Yeah, my thought of that is that it's one thing to experience sexual desire, but coveting goes further and seeks to possess. And so it's more specific, whereas lustful things can be more broad or general and more what do you call it, of the thoughts and so on. Whereas coveting is an active seeking to possess something, either inordinately or something which you can't lawfully possess.
This commandment has to do with also with the disposition of the heart. There's a lot of references to the heart of man and how it can be, for lack of a better word, tarnished with covetousness.
Yeah, well, maybe I should. Let me read from one of the paragraphs here, 2339. It's a very interesting quote here. I'm not reading the entire paragraph, but some selections from it. But it says here that the self-control, of course, becomes increasingly difficult to those who are self-indulgent. But the alternative is clear: either man governs his passions. Either man governs his passions and finds peace, or he lets himself be dominated by them and becomes unhappy. Man's dignity, therefore, requires him to act out of conscious and free choice. Sorry, so I got a little interruption there. Says here, man's dignity, therefore, requires him to act out of conscious and free choice, and not by blind impulses in himself. And so man gains such dignity when, ridding himself from all slavery to the passions, he presses forward to his goal by freely choosing what is good. Now, that's a lot, but it was interrupted there by that ring. I'm sorry about that. But I can say that obviously, overall, coveting is about the antidote to it is to simply govern our passions, to take authority over them. And it's a long, lifelong journey to self-mastery. And, for most of us, it's in some areas more than others. Some people struggle a lot with certain areas in life and less so with others. And it's different for each person. But at the end of the day, it is a battle And coveting, or the commandment not to covet, is, to put it more positively, an invitation to be happy with what we do have, to control our excessive desires, which is fundamentally the coveting plugs in primarily to greed. I want to possess that which is something that either I want to possess it inordinately, in other words, with excessiveness, or something that I shouldn't possess at all. It's not mine to take.
Yeah, and I think too, it's good to realize that many of us, all of us at times, are never satisfied with what we have, and that's because of the Catechism brings up that ugly word concupiscence, and how we have this intense form of human desire, that the movement of the appetite, contrary to the operation of human reason, and St. Paul identifies it with rebellion of the flesh against the spirit, and I think a lot of times, I like how in the past, when I've heard sermons where you've explained the idea that the flesh is not just about carnal realities, but it's just like this rebellion, this sort of
Hmm.
rebellion against God that's deep in the human heart. Can you
Yes.
kind of go into that St. Paul's understanding of that?
Yeah, he uses the Greek word sarx, flesh, and this leads, unfortunately, a lot of people who just read it in a perfunctory or cursory way to think it has something to do with the desires of the body. But at the end of the day, the way Paul describes the flesh is that it's actually more of a spirit, a negative spirit within us that bristles at being told what to do, that doesn't like to be corrected, that wants to do what it wants to do and doesn't want to be told what to do. It's that part of us that doesn't want to have anything to do with God or rules or anybody telling me what to do. So it's more of an attitude than just simply a question of the body. And so certainly some of it does manifest in bodily things, sexuality or other forms of intemperance, alcohol or drugs or sexual matters. But it's much broader. The idea of the flesh is a rebellious spirit. Now, thanks be to God, we have something else, though, in us called our human spirit, not the Holy Spirit yet, but just even our human spirit. And it's that part of us that's open to God, seeks truth, looks and is attracted to what is good and true and beautiful, and wants to know God and is open to being addressed by God. And to use a kind of an old Latin phrase, it's that part of us, the human spirit, that gives us capax Dei, a capacity to be in a relationship with God.
Mm, right. And then a big part of this section too on the ninth commandment has to deal with modesty
Hmm.
and protecting our vision, protecting how we dress, how we
Hmm.
deal with people, protecting our emotions too.
Hmm.
Um, and I think this is probably a virtue that's lacking in certain parts of the world or most of most of the world today. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen a change in modesty in your lifetime.
Hmm.
Um,
I certainly have.
yeah. How do you, at this stage of the game where the fashions are so, uh, I guess, contrary to modesty, how do we win the war on that?
Hmm. Yeah, no, I don't know how we win the war except to just hold the line and sort of encourage greater understanding of modesty. Modesty at its heart is, to link it to this commandment, the ninth commandment particularly. Modesty is reverence for mystery.
Hmm.
That there are just some things that should not be on open display. And this isn't just true of things like, the body or sexuality, but even like what we do in church, we veil chalices and things that are holy objects that are not just to be out on display, they're to be covered until their use is required and then recovered. And so
Mm,
something is holy or sacred, set apart, we tend to cover and keep away from ordinary usage or ordinary interaction and so on. And therefore, again, modesty this is one of the reasons why religious women traditionally would veil themselves, not just the head veil, but the whole body, the habit, which was meant to be, to cover it, be modest. And this is reserved for Christ, this religious sister. And so this is what we do. Now, unfortunately, in our culture, um, a type of nudity is taken up where everything is uncovered that should really be covered. And I don't want to blame women, but I find myself very puzzled at the way even very, I would say, moderate, generally good women will wear things that I'm like, wow, what's that all about? For example, I mean, why, for example, I'm just going to just ask questions for a second. Men don't have anything really to cover up on our chest, but we wear shirts that button up to our neck. And we generally don't. But for some reason, women who do have things to cover, shall we say, they have these plunging necklines. Even
right.
what you would, why is that? Or again, most men will wear baggy shorts and walk around with a t-shirt, at a beach or a sporting event. But for some reason, women walk around, and these days, especially with these terrible, I thought the bikini was revealing, but these new, I don't want to even get into it, thong-like bikinis, they're almost in a state of total nudity. And that is absolutely bizarre to me. Why would a woman want to do that? And I'm not here to psychoanalyze, but I'm just saying I'm amazed at what is done today, and and what isn't done. And there's just, to me, a remarkable. What are they, slaves to fashion, or do they have no idea what this does to men? But even a sense of self dignity, that there are aspects of you that are sacred that should only be seen by your husband, and maybe only when necessary, a doctor. But this is not something to be shown and revealed. For example, why do they in the Olympics? Why do women play volleyball in bikinis, but men play in shorts and a t-shirt? Or on track events, women run in these very small, tiny little briefs, and whereas men wear shorts, baggy shorts, and they run. And it's there's something odd going on there. And I
I
would
think
call.
I think they would argue aerodynamics. It makes you faster.
I can see that. Well, then why aren't the men doing that? Why aren't the men wearing bikini-like shorts? What do you call them, speedos or whatever?
Right.
And men run faster anyway. I mean, it's just it's very strange. It's what I'm trying to say is that this has taken hold in our culture in a way that even very good Bible believing, Christian women and Catholic women and so on, don't even think twice sometimes about donning things that are really questionable. And even
Hmm.
dumb things like, what is this thing about walking around with jeans with holes in them and stuff? What is that all about? I mean, I don't get that. Anyway, I'm sounding a little bit curmudgeonly here. I know.
No, it's
But
it's entertaining.
You baited me, Father.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
But
But it's
anyway, yeah.
and
But
then in the catechism here it says purity requires modesty, an
hmm
integral part of temperance.
hmm
Modesty protects the intimate center of the person.
hmm
It means refusing to unveil what should remain hidden, as you said. It
hmm
is ordered to chastity to whose sensitivity it bears witness. It
hmm
guides how one looks at others and behaves towards them in conformity with the dignity of persons and their solidarity. I think that would also be with like dirty jokes,
Yeah.
like off-color jokes or
hmm
sexual jokes and,
Yeah.
talking about
Take
women,
something sacred, yeah, and yeah,
how we speak about women as
yeah,
men or vice versa.
yeah,
That is part of modesty. Yeah. So,
yeah.
Bill, what do you have anything to add to this in terms of being a director of religious education, a father, a lay person?
I'll simply speak from a father. I am love the beach like the next guy, but I am continually amazed at the beach these days, and I'll even skip the way women are dressing and just say, I watch the families and I watch these guys who appear to be the father of these teenage girls and what they're
Yeah,
wearing. I don't understand. And I'll just leave it at that.
yeah. Why don't
I
they permit
literally
it? Yeah.
literally don't
Yeah.
understand.
There's a story about this one father where his I found this on the internet. It was hilarious. He's probably about my age, a little bit younger, or maybe a couple around my age, and his daughter was a teenager, and they were going out for ice cream, and she was wearing some really short shorts, and he said, "Hey, you're not wearing those," and she wore them anyway. So he went up to his room and he cut off some jeans,
Mm.
all the way up
Oh
to
yeah,
like,
right.
and then he put on his shirt said, "World's greatest dad." and, and just they walked around and like the daughter was in complete embarrassment. And finally they agreed to change their uniforms.
Yeah, right. Well, at any rate, I can only just say that I don't want to be too hard on women. Men have to control themselves as well, but there is this tendency to sort of, for women today, broadly speaking, not all women, but to sort of unveil in a way they shouldn't, and that this takes what should belong only to her husband and sort of invites a covetousness. Look at me. And I know that I do know some men who said, "Yeah, I like my wife to dress scantily when we go out because everyone's seeing what I'm getting." I'm like, no, no, that isn't the way to think about this. And so again, it turns her into a trophy girl or something. None of this belongs out there. So at the end of the day, the ninth commandment is saying, "Look, I know you think your neighbor's wife is kind of attractive, but she's not for you. You've got your
Yeah.
own wife, but she's already married, but she's not for you." And likewise, those who are married should keep covered what belongs what should be uncovered only in those moments of marital intimacy, period. And it just is a lot of voyeurism today in our culture. And
Yeah,
um,
I think Our Lady of Fatima had a thing or two to
yeah,
say about this when she appeared to the three kids in Portugal.
yeah.
You know, that the downfall of the culture has to do with the fashions that
Mhm.
were back in the 1920s.
Oh my gosh. And the 20s were terrible too. It was very risque. And
Was it really?
yeah, no, the 20s was a very immoral time in this country and in Europe too. The whole, German Weimar Republic and all that was a lot of heavy, the flapper age and women's scantily clothing and not quite as maybe scantily as today, but it was a pretty shocking change from 1890 to 1920.
Huh. Wow. Okay. All right.
By the
So I
way, could
mean,
I say, by the way, to all women out there, modesty is key in a certain way. It is the female virtue, when it comes to this matter of sexuality. And I want to say to you, modesty is very attractive.
no. Yeah.
Men are very interested. I mean, in a certain sense, mystery attracts,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
that's really, you're just throwing it all out there for everyone to see. After a while, yeah, yeah, oh, ho hum, ho hum. It doesn't work. What attracts is mystery and modesty, and. And again, I'm not trying to give dating advice, but I'm just saying. Back, by the way, there was a lot of stuff back in the 50s and before about even married women maintaining modesty in front of their husband as a general norm. Now,
Hmm.
obviously, there would be times where, in marital intimacy, but the point is that once again, keep your husband wondering.
Hmm.
Hide what isn't right now to be exposed, and don't just walk around and scantily clad in the there. And you remember in those days in the 50s and before, houses were a lot smaller. There wasn't the kind of privacy that is available today often in these larger en suites and all that kind of stuff we have today. But I finally say this: there's actually a video out there on the internet, and it's very interesting, and it sounds horrible. But the title of it, and it's from the mid 40s, it was published, How to Undress in Front of Your Husband. And
Huh.
what it was about wasn't what you think. It was about how do you maintain modesty in these tiny little houses they lived in, where they had maybe just a small, what do you call it, suite where they lived in, a small bedroom. And there wasn't really some place to go. The kids were in the next room over or whatever. So, but to undress with modesty, and they recommended like a screen and undressing in stages and never just completely right in front of your husband undressing and getting into a nightgown or evening attire. And it was once again there was a sense that women had about modesty that was protected, and it kept the husband kind of looking because mystery. And I
Hmm.
don't. I'm sounding like I'm giving dating advice or something here, but I'm just saying these were the things that women used to know that modesty is very attractive and mystery is good to maintain.
Yeah, I remember in college, Monsignor and Bill, there was, I played baseball and there used to be this thing called the mall. We would all hang out in the mall and, basically just watch
Yeah.
people go by.
Yeah.
And there's this one particular girl, and she was actually at one time Miss Oklahoma, but
Mm,
she dressed it very modestly, very beautifully, but very
yeah.
modestly all the time. And it
Hmm.
was the only girl that I remember the baseball players universally treated with respect.
Hmm.
They would
Hmm.
like run up to open the door for her and all this. Cause I mean, I
Yeah.
think we
Right.
all realized she was way out of our league,
Yeah. Way above your.
but it was just amazing that the command by the way she held herself had over the men on the campus.
Hmm.
And I think that's kind of where you're going at is that
Yeah.
it brings that mystery, that modesty, that beauty comes out in different ways. It leaves
Hmm.
kind of leaves, guys wanting to look at the whole person, basically.
Right. Hmm.
Yeah. So,
Anyways, it's just well. Anyway, we could talk forever on it, so I'll just refrain from saying much more. I probably said too much already.
it was great. So, all right, I guess, should we move on to the 10th commandment?
Sure.
All right, 10th commandment. You shall not covet anything that is your neighbor's. You shall not desire your neighbor's house, his field, his manservant or his maidservant or his ox or his ass or anything that is your neighbor's. That comes
Hmm.
from the book of Exodus.
Hmm.
And so this 10th commandment unfolds and completes the ninth concerning with concupiscence of the flesh. And we're now looking at coveting goods, so seeing that sports car go by and thinking, oh, it would be great if I could drive that baby someday, if I, whatever. So
Right.
why is it a big deal, Monsignor, to sort of covet someone else's stuff?
Yeah. Well, first of all, um, it taps into a very, very deep drive in us, one of the deadly sins, greed.
Mm,
And that is to say that greed is the insatiable desire for more. Whatever we get is never enough. And so we have to moderate greed. And as I say, at the heart of greed, in a way, is that I'm not grateful for what I do have. Oh, yeah, yeah, well, whatever, but I need this now. I need that. So, well, God has given us so many good things and we don't pay any attention to it. And yet we want this other thing over here. So I think that um, let me just also read. There's a wide scope, isn't there? To the commandment there. You're neither your neighbor's house or wife or manservant or maidservant or ox or ass or anything that is your neighbor's. Now, we should recall that by coveting, though, by definition, involves the willful entertaining of excessive or inappropriate desires. So it's not wrong to desire things that we reasonably need, right? So clearly, it's things that are essential for our desire, like food and water and warmth and shelter. But and likewise, we all have a need for love and affection, family, and all these kinds of things. So, but on the other hand, what happens is that we start to desire them inordinately. And I know I'm using a jazzy word. To desire something inordinately means out of reason, unreasonably. I know you would like a house, and but your 3,500 square foot house isn't enough. You need a 5,000 square foot house. Really? Why? I mean, you start to see that it's a coveting goes into that excessive and willful looking for things beyond what I reasonably need or beyond what I reasonably should have. And finally, some things I desire are not mine to have. So
right.
if I were to desire, my neighbor's wife, that's not mine to have. She's not mine to have. But also, to some degree, their property, all those other things, is a very powerful, reminder that these are things that belong to them, not to me. Now it says here, I'm going to read from paragraph 2536 in the Catechism. It says the 10th commandment forbids greed and the desire to amass earthly goods without limit. It forbids avarice arising from passion for riches and their attendant power. It also forbids the desire to commit injustice by harming our neighbor in regard to his temporal goods. So obviously, theft and or unreasonably holding on to things that belong to someone else, and so on. So we have that. So
I don't,
I
I
don't
don't, I don't think greed is something that people realize or confess much.
know. Hmm.
And I think it's because we're so comfortable in our current situation that we don't. I think we've created needs for
Yeah, right.
ourselves,
Yeah.
and maybe we've all been guilty of an expenditure that wasn't necessary from
Hmm.
here to there. But I found this anecdote that I was given to by a priest, Father Sam Plummer, gave this years ago. And he
Hmm.
said the average 10-year-old owns 238 toys but plays with just 12 daily. 3.1% of the children in the world live in the United States, but they own 40% of the toys around the world.
Hmm.
The average American woman owns 30 outfits, one for each day of the month. Um, People will spend more than 8 years of their life shopping, and most homes have more televisions than people.
Hmm.
Americans donate 1.9% of their income to charity, while 6 billion people live in the world, often less than 13,000 a year.
Hmm.
And Americans, listen to this, spend about $1.2 trillion annually on non-essential goods. In other words, things they don't
Hmm.
need.
Hmm.
That's interesting, huh?
Hmm.
And then 162 million people purchased lottery tickets in 2016.
Yeah, my
And
goodness.
have a 2 car garage and 3
Garage
storage units.
and 3 storage units. Yeah, and there that is true. People
Mhm.
have bigger houses than ever, and they still
Yeah,
don't have room for their stuff.
sure. My goodness. Yeah, and of course, by the way, you mentioned greed is not usually confessed. It's not commonly confessed. I think because we tend to associate greed with the wealthy.
Yeah.
Who are the wealthy? Well, that guy over there that earns $1 more an hour than I do, he's wealthy, so he's greedy. I'm not greedy, and I'm
Yeah.
not wealthy. And yet we live in America, as you say, and we live in the top 1% of everything in this world when it comes to
Mhm.
finances and you know resources, all that stuff. And so there is a there is for us a kind of a need to look at our, when do we ever come in our culture to a place where a guy says, well, look, I'm earning 500 grand a year. I really only need 200 to live on reasonably, which is more than most of us have. And I'm going to take this other 300 and I'm going to use it for something that benefits other people. Maybe I'll invest it in a market that, I mean, an industry that needs jobs, or open up a factory, or I'll do something with this other money that I could maybe, benefit others. Even if it isn't direct service to the poor, it might be things that help the poor to, I mean, maybe I'll help fund a trade school or whatever. When do we ever get to that point in our culture? What happens is I'm earning 500,000, but man, I can't keep this beach house going and have the 2 matching SUVs for my wife and myself and put the kids in all the different private schools. I mean, we just need more and more, and it's just never enough. And so somehow we get into this cycle, and we get lost very quickly, thinking that mere mere wants become actual needs, and that's not the case.
Mhm.
You may recall, some of our listeners, who may be listening to this podcast somewhere in the future, but this past weekend, Jesus told us that we had to renounce all of our possessions to be
Yeah.
his disciple. Now, renounce doesn't mean go sell everything and live on a park bench. That's that's irresponsible. But it certainly does mean that we've got to begin to let go of our just absolute obsession with these things and begin to become more free and trust God more. And so I want to also read something here from the Catechism, if I could, 2544, and into, I'm just again summarizing it, but Jesus enjoins his disciples to prefer him to everything and everyone, and bids them to renounce all that they have for his sake and that of the gospel. This precept of detachment from riches is obligatory for entrance into the kingdom of heaven. And the Lord grieves over the rich because they find their consolation in the abundance of goods. But blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And so again, we're called to a kind of a detachment. And this commandment, to take it from its negative expression to a more positive one, is it's an invitation to live moderately and to receive gifts with gratitude, enjoy them, but also share them, trusting in God's providence. So it's an invitation to trust. It's an invitation to moderation. It's an invitation to gratitude. God's been so good to me that I want to share with others, and I have more than I need. And I'm willing to be generous and share and be kind and let go of everything if needed, and anything that holds me back from wholeheartedly following Jesus. And there's also a very strange sort of paradox that comes with wealth and riches. And that is that it tends to enslave us. We keep thinking, if I just get enough money, pay off my debts, and I won't have a care in the world. But the richer we are, the more anxious we are, both culturally and as individuals. Secondly, the idea that if I just have enough money, whatever, I can get whatever I want, and I won't have to well, study those who have that kind of wealth. They're not particularly happy. They may be comfortable, but they're not happy because there's a God-sized hole in our heart, and we have to
Right.
finally let go of this idea that throwing all kinds of stuff into this God-sized hole, which is infinite, is nothing in creation. All of creation itself wouldn't satisfy us.
Mm.
Only God, only God. So somehow we have to reconnect the goods of this earth and the people of this earth to God who gives them all, and to be grateful. So a man should be grateful for the wife he has with all of her flaws. And by the way, of course, he, the husband, doesn't have any flaws. Oops, oh, he does, or like to be grateful for the things I have, and to realize that this is what God has apportioned to me, and I'm grateful, Lord. I'm thankful. But covetousness or greed sort of short circuits all this stuff and makes us overly possessive, untrusting of God. We have to acquire and acquire and acquire and think that this is going to solve our problems or make us happy. And it's a lie, and we know it's a lie, but we still indulge it. And that becomes sinful. So, again, one final thing I'm going to say, the precept of detachment from worldly riches is obligatory for entrance into the kingdom of God.
Mm.
So
Mm.
we have to learn to let the Lord just begin this work in us. And by the way, can I say, you're going to lose everything anyway. You might as well, whether you're a pagan or a Christian, you might as well do it lovingly and say, I give it back to you, God. Whatever it is, like my hair, my svelte figure. I've said goodbye to family members. It's all going anyway. The point is, you might as well joyfully say, I'm so grateful, Lord. And even if I have these things only for a time, I'm thankful. You've been good to me, and I'm going to stay open to trusting you, whatever you want me to do, Lord.
Yeah, Bill, that reminds me of that joke about the guy who died and wanted all his cash. And there's
Oh,
a there was a man who had worked all his life and saved his money. He was a real cheapskate when it
uh,
came to his money. He loved money more than just about anything. And just before he died, he said to his wife, "Now listen, when I die, I want you to take all my money and place it in a casket with me because I want to take all my money to the afterlife." So he got his wife to promise him with all her heart that when he died, she would put all the money in the casket with him when one day he died.
mhm,
He was stretched out in the casket. The wife was sitting there in their black next to the best friend. And when they finished the ceremony, just before the undertakers got ready to close the casket, the wife said, "Wait a minute." She had a shoebox with her. She came over with the box and placed it in the casket. Then the undertakers locked the casket and rolled away. Her friend said, "I hope you weren't crazy enough to put all that money in there with that stingy old man." She said, "Yes, I promised. I'm a good Christian. I can't lie. I promised him that I would put that money in that casket with him." "You mean you put every cent of his money in the casket with him?" "I sure did. I got it all together and put it in my account and wrote a check."
mhm.
Yeah, can't
And
take
he's
it with you.
holding that check in his hand as the casket is closed.
Right. So
Yeah,
what
that's
I guess the
those old
solution
rabbinic
is
stories.
I guess this is also beckons us to be generous,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah, right.
to be generous with the poor, to be generous with
Mhm,
those when they ask for help, to not be attached to the money we have, to
mhm,
take some of the surplus and give it back to God,
right.
you know. I mean, I was quoting that. I think what Americans give less than 2% to charity,
Mhm, mhm.
it's abysmal. I mean, I even in churches,
I'm telling you,
apparently.
we just went through that exercise, and I'm not, I'm not, I don't want to say too much, but it was shocking to see our our giving that the diocese worked on and basically handed us, you know, broken down by different categories, and I
Mhm.
I I
Yeah.
don't envy you all as
Mhm,
pastors and priests who have to talk about offertory enhancement
mhm.
and all
Yeah.
that, but wow,
Dang.
I was shocked.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're
Right.
right. I want to maybe as you were also broadening it here a little bit more in this way too. From a lot of people have a big chip on their shoulder and are resentful because people are either wealthier than they are or seem to have more or whatever. And so once again, this commandment, if the observing of this commandment by God's grace can remove some of that, resentment that, well, someone has more than I do. Isn't that fair? And we get angry. And by the way, this, of course, has been exploited by communists, by Marxists in our time, and others before. So there, you may recall that we this notion of critical theory, which is Karl Marx said, here's what you got to do to start a revolution. You got to get people convinced that there are two classes of people. There are the oppressed and there is the oppressor. And if someone earns $1 more than hour than you, they're an oppressor and you're the oppressed, or if someone is this race versus that race. And so you divide out the people and get them to hate each other and start fighting. And this all ties into covetousness and greed.
Mm.
That somehow or another, someone has something more than I do. I get angry and resentful about that. And I don't even ask myself questions like, well, how is it that they have more? Do they work harder? Do I need to, do they have certain talents? I don't know. But what do I have and what can I do? Nobody asks that question. It's they're oppressing me and I'm supposed to hate them and seek to destroy them. And so this creates social unrest and social unease as well as social revolutions. And they sowed this seed. This was actually a strategy of Karl Marx and the whole Marxist dialectic and so on, the whole critical theory, all that stuff. Take people and divide them into two categories, the bourgeois and the proletariat and all this kind of these different terms they used to divide people by usually financial things, but in other places have been used to divide us by race and other things. And some group, someone has more than I do, and I am now righteously angry, and I'm going to go to war with them. And this all ties into covetousness. So here's a quote from the Catechism that brings this out. This is from Catechism 2538 and following. The 10th commandment requires that envy or jealousy be banished from the human heart. Now, envy refers to the sadness at the sight of another's goods and the immoderate desire to acquire them for oneself. I would argue that's actually jealousy, but and to possess them even unjustly. So, I'm angry or upset at the goodness or the goods or things of another person. When and so I have an unjust desire to acquire them for myself. And when this sentiment wishes to grave harm to the neighbor, it's a mortal sin. St. Augustine saw envy as the diabolical sin. For he said, from envy are born everything else like hatred, detraction, calumny, joy, caused by the misfortune of a neighbor, and the displeasure caused by his prosperity. So it is worth noting the scriptures teaching that through the devil's envy, death entered our world. So,
and that's a huge distinction between being jealous and envious, because to be envious means want to destroy what's in the other.
yeah, the good,
versus
probably the good, yeah, in them.
as opposed to wanting what they have.
Yeah,
'Cause
jealousy wants to possess the good, whereas envy wants to destroy it. But again, yeah, go ahead, Father.
Yeah, which I think is a huge distinction, because, as you said, envy is the diabolical sin, whereby when we see goodness, we want to destroy it in others, which is a huge problem. I think we see in this can happen in a classroom
Yeah.
where Art got a plus on his
Yeah, right.
thing, and everyone else got a D
An
because
A.
they didn't study, and they
You
call
got to
him
beat up Art, man.
they
You got to
beat up
him
Art, they call him a nerd. Yeah, it
Yeah,
destroys the goodness.
it's ugly. It's ugly. But again, you see that all this coveting can lead to complete social revolutions and things because someone has something that I want and I want it. And by gosh, they're not, why do they get to have it and I don't? And oppressor versus oppressed is the whole Marxist dialectic. Now, in our time, this has been used to foster social unrest in our country, other places as well, all throughout the world, and to usher in a communistic, socialistic kind of solution. And It's ugly, ugly stuff. And an awful lot of the race stuff that goes on in our culture, is tied into this, and it's being fomented and augmented because once again, but it ultimately comes back more to greed than to race. Now, why is it that they have more than we do, whoever they are? It's not just black and white. It's often white, these Hispanics versus the Koreans and all that sort of the kind of stuff that goes on in our culture. And somewhere along the line, this all plugs into this idea of greed and of coveting. And nowhere do you hear anyone saying, be grateful for what you have and work harder to get maybe to build up some stuff for your family in the future, but be grateful.
For sure, for sure. Well, thank you, Monsignor. So we have successfully gone through the Ten Commandments, and I would really encourage you all to, go back to some of these episodes and share them with others. I think that this is a great starting point of forming one's conscience and also knowing the truth about morality as we see it as Roman Catholics, but also comes from a biblical background of what God is asking us to live in our moral life. And in some ways it's just the beginning because we're supposed to surpass this in our life. So a great gift to know the commandments, and even greater to, with God's help, to live them. And
Yeah.
so, all
Amen to
right.
that. Well, thank you, Father. Yeah.
Well, Monsignor, if we could have your blessing, sir.
Yes, please, Lord, please help us. These commandments aren't just forbidding things, they're inviting us to consider a whole new life that you offer us, a life of gratitude, a life of peace, of self control, and of truth, of love for life and human life, and respect, and above all, love of you, of your holy name, and the glory that you are. So, Lord, we thank you for this instruction, for these commandments are not prison walls, but rather they are defending walls. The safest place, Lord, in the whole wide world is inside your commandments, and the happiest place. So in this, we ask you to bless us now. May Almighty God bless you, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Spirit.
Amen.
Amen.